Yeah, it is 10:01. So let's get started. Number one, thank you so much for coming. I know that your time is valuable and it's the start of the year and everybody is excited about real estate. So we want to honor your time to make sure that we give you some good stuff that you can take away here. What are you guys seeing right now with the market?
Amazing.
Well, Mitch, so
It's amazing.
Mitch thinks it's amazing. Who else? Let's get some participation. What are you guys seeing with activity right now?
Still just starting to slow down for sellers, like listings, in my opinion.
Got it. So it's slowing down for sellers. Who else?
Picking up a little bit of buyers.
Yeah. That is what we're seeing. Of course, as lenders, we only do buyers. So it is nice to see buyers coming out of the woodwork. We're seeing that activity start to pick up right now. Lead wise, I would say, Mitch, how much are y'all up right now from say an average month in the fourth quarter? Leads.
Up, I would say I'm up 3 times as much. Oh, from the fourth quarter, I would say from December, it's at least 3 times as much.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I would say we're month to date, double the activity.
Yeah, and my team's very similar. Twice as many leads, which we know as the leads come in, those are going to turn into contracts and closings. It's probably going to take 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. But when that activity and those new leads start coming in, the contracts and the deals are going to follow. It just takes a little bit of time. We are in control, in my opinion, of 3 things, right? As salespeople, as business owners, we're in control of our attitude, all right, our effort and our activity, right? Our attitude, how do we show up? Are we showing up positive? Is it a good time to buy? Are we reflecting that with our clients? Number 2, what kind of effort are we putting in? Like, you only know if you're putting 100% into your business. Nobody else can look at you and determine how hard you're working and what kind of effort level you've put in. Internally, you know that, and you get to choose what kind of effort you put in. And I think activity is super, super important. We get to choose on a daily basis what activities we're doing. And I think what happens is a lot of times we choose to do activities that are very have low productivity, but they keep us busy. We choose to do the things that make us feel busy that don't actually move the needle. And we've got to choose to do the activities that really bring in leads, choose the activities that are going to help us grow our incomes and grow our businesses. So that's something I want you thinking about. What are the activities you do on a daily basis that really move the needle? And how much time do you spend on a daily basis doing things that make you feel busy that don't actually bring in any business, right?
Can we get some participation? What's the number 1 activity that you do that brings in business? Talk to people. How?
Yeah, number 1 is definitely face to face.
Face to face? On the phone too?
Yeah, I mean, phone calls.
Phone calls? So seeing people face to face and phone calls. What else do you guys do that brings in business? Is that the only 2 things? It makes it very narrow. That's all you got to focus on, right? What do we do that gets us busy that doesn't do anything? I'm guilty. Emails, right?
Social media. Anybody find themselves in a social media hole where like 45 minutes later, it's like, what happened to the last 45 minutes? I've accomplished nothing, but I've scrolled through Instagram for 45 minutes and accomplished nothing.
Yeah, but if you're deliberate on social media, right? You record a video, you're thoughtful, you put it out and you have a plan, you can absolutely spend 20 minutes a day on your social media that can bring in business, right? But don't let that 20 minutes turn into a scroll fest of, whatever, and read about the most recent, conspiracy theories or whatever. So guys, I got a little quote here. This is from the Navy SEALs training. Okay. Anybody in here in the military? No one. All right. So me neither, but what in this situation can I control immediately? That's what they train the Navy SEALs. Navy SEALs are not dealing with buyers and sellers and things they're dealing with bullets, right? So they train them when the situation is tough. Who thinks the market's tougher now than it was a year ago? But what in this situation can you control immediately? Clint just went over it, right? Your attitude, your effort, and your activity. So that's the first thing I want you guys to take away is what do you need to change on your daily basis to do more activity that'll bring in more business? I tell every agent, if you don't have a plan, call 10 people a day. If you'll make 10 outbound calls a day, or maybe you schedule an hour, sometimes it's 8, maybe you get to 15, depending on how many people answer. You do an hour every day. That's one of the biggest keys to having a business that's going to grow is making outbound calls and saying, hey, I want to be your agent. Do you know anybody looking to buy or sell? Okay. So guys, we're going to get into how to leverage the loan process. Okay, that's kind of what the process is today, or the topic is today. And we're going to talk about how you can leverage us, hopefully as your lender, to help you close more business, right? So there was a study done, and this was over 2,500 agents, and they studied this for like a year. They said the average agent talks to about 25 prospects, okay? And of that, they get to 4 that they nurture. You guys know what a nurture is, right? It's somebody you think, oh, this is an actual buyer. This is somebody who's going to do something. This is somebody who can do something. But most of them aren't ready to do it right now, so you got to nurture them. Does that make sense? Of those, they close 2. And if you guys have done studies, every study I've ever or looked at studies for realtors, the average closing percentage for realtors is 10%. You may be a little bit above that, you may be a little bit below it, but that's been I've been in coaching for since 2011. They've always said it's about 10%. And that is about 10%, a little bit less on this study. Okay. The most interesting piece of that was that 12 of the 25 went on to buy a house in the next 12 to 18 months. So that bottom line, what does that mean? If you talk to 25, nurtured 4, close to 10 of them, you missed. Okay. And we're going to talk about some of our processes and things like that. And guys, anything that we go over today, we want you to steal as much as you can, right? Anything that we do, it's for you to take. Okay. So we're going to kind of go over some stuff that hopefully help you.
And before we move on, who knows, if you know exactly what your closing percentage is, raise your hand. All right, we got one person in the room who knows what their closing
What's your
percentage
name?
is.
Yes, I love that guy. We got the same name.
Not related, but
Not
he does have
related,
the
same name. Love it.
So I will tell you that that's not surprising, but something we should be doing as business people is tracking how many leads we generate, how many of them actually qualify to sell. Not everybody who owns a home qualifies to sell it, right? They may not have enough equity. They may be going through a situation where they're not legally allowed to sell. So not everybody who wants to do something can. How many actually use us to close on their transaction, right? When you know your numbers, it allows you to then make decisions based off of real data and not how you feel. I have talked to realtors before who tell me they close 80% of their leads. Who believes that is accurate? It's not accurate, right? Because what's happening is that realtor is not actually tracking their leads. They're tracking the people that said, hey, will you come list my house? And 4 out of 5 close. So therefore my closing percentage is 80%. But what about all the people they talked to that didn't choose them as their realtor, or that they actually never set an appointment with or went somewhere else? So knowing your numbers, like when we think about having a business, a real business, you think Microsoft knows their numbers? You think Coca-Cola knows how much it costs to make Coke and how much they make when they sell it, and how much they need to make to service their clients for next month? They know it down to the penny, right? If we're going to run a real business, we've got to know our numbers down to the penny if we want to run a real business. So start tracking every single lead you get, and your closing percentage will increase simply because you've got all the data and you know who to follow up with. The second thing, and this is what we're going to talk about, is our process and how that can help you with your follow-up. So,
Hey, Clint, real quick on the definition of a prospect, because when I first heard that stat, I thought, man, that seems kind of low. But when you define what a prospect is, you kind of realize, oh,
Yeah.
that makes more sense, right?
It's anybody that comes in contact. It's your sign calls. It's your referrals that are kind of cold. I mean, I wouldn't put internet in there, right? Because you're gonna get a ton of internet. Internet's gonna
If you're
close
buying
about
leads.
if you're buying leads, they close at 1 to 2%. And they've tried every which way to raise that, and some people have gotten all the way to 3%, right?
For those in once they say they're interested.
Right. Once they say they're interested, that's gonna weed out over half of them, or probably 2/3 of them. Then you have a decent closing percentage. Okay.
And we track it by name and number too, as well,
Right.
right? Like we get a name and a number, you never get a hold of them, they're still a prospect.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if somebody refers you, anybody ever had that happen? Hey, I'm referring you my friend. His name is Joe. Here's his number. You call Joe and you never get a hold of Joe. Joe never called you back. That's still a lead, right? Because when you're calling, you're saying, hey, Mitch referred you and I'm trying to get a hold of you. I'd love to help you. That's a lead that you just didn't convert. And that's why people don't really know their closing percentage, because they don't track all that. So let our closing percentage become yours is part of what we can help you with. We've tracked this since 2014, really started tracking probably 2013. But Our closing percentage has always been, as an office, over 25% of referred leads. Last year, honestly, that went down a little. For the first time, it was below 25%, just because people didn't qualify or people decided not to. Does that make sense? Everybody probably felt, man, I got so many people I'm talking to, and people are just kind of hesitant. But you're talking about an 8-9 year period, we're at 25%. So if you can go from 10% to 25%, let our closing percentage become yours. So as you refer people to us, our whole process is to help you retain more of your clients and close a higher percentage of them. Does that make sense? If you guys have a great follow-up system already, a great CRM, awesome. So do we. And if we're doing it as a team, we're going to do a lot more business together. Anybody ever had a client go to Quicken Loans? Does that Quicken Loans loan officer say, hey, call you up and say, hey, they're looking at a FSBO, you better call them back? Anybody ever had that happen? Anybody ever had your loan officer say, hey, I talked to the client, they're looking at a FSBO and they're looking at making an offer on it. I talked to them and said they need to talk to you, but I'm letting you know so you can get back with them. We've done that dozens of times. Client will call you and say, hey, I found a house. I was driving down the street and man, I think I can save a lot of money. My opinion is unrepresented seller, unrepresented buyer that doesn't know anything about real estate, that can get really dicey. We always get them back to you. Okay. So as we go through this, we're going to go through each stage. What happens at each stage of the process? The first stage is obviously leads, which we get them pre-approved. What happens when they're shopping for a house? What happens when they go into contract? And then we're going to talk about some loan programs and special stuff. And then what we do post-closing, getting feedback, getting referrals for life and things like that.
And I will say, what we want to create is a predictable process. Because when we have a predictable process, we get a predictable outcome. You know what that means? If we go through the same steps with every single client, that's why the closing percentage is so consistent month after month, year after year. When we go off of feel and calling people when I feel like it, or sometimes I have a presentation I go through with a client, and sometimes I just skip it because I don't feel like it. Sometimes the client is super happy and sometimes it doesn't go great, right? Because I'm always switching it up. We've created a predictable process because we get a predictable outcome. So I want you to think about your own systems as we go through this, because we're going to show you like the forms that we go through with clients. Think about how you work with a seller. Think about how you work with a buyer and what you are currently doing that you can tighten up, or maybe some things that you can add to your process, right? So if you have buyers and you don't have a buyer packet that you go through with them every single time, you either have to steal that from another realtor, put your own logo on it, or create it and start using it every single time. Same thing, if you don't go through the same listing presentation with every seller, I promise you, you're missing it sometimes when you go on those appointments. We want to go through the same process every single time, because when you know exactly what you're going to go through, you don't miss steps. It's smooth. It's more smooth. I promise you that. And your confidence goes through the roof every time you go to that appointment, because you know I'm going to go through the same process every single time, and I know that it works, right? The last thing, it makes your job, you become more efficient. You don't have to recreate the wheel with every single client. You grab the buyer packet, you grab the listing packet, and you go. So once you create it, you can do your job a lot faster as well. So think about your own business and things that you can put in when it comes to being a realtor with your clients, because I promise you this will help your business.
Yeah. So the first stage, guys, is what happens at every stage. The first one's leads. This is the biggest place that we can help our agents. Okay. So what we ask is if you refer us, please get permission. Just say, hey, I'm going to have my lender give you a call. Just make it part of your process, right? Hey, we're looking at houses. What kind of house do you guys want? Oh, you want a 3-bedroom? Hey, if I got a 4-bedroom in that same price range, would that be acceptable? Oh, it would? Awesome. Okay, and that's perfect. And, I'm going to have my lender give you a call because he's one of the best in town, or she's one of the best in town. And then you just keep going through your process, right? And then what we ask is just give us the name and number. So many times, I have it all the time. It happened last week. Somebody gave out my name, said, hey, so-and-so is going to call you. I said, great. I usually ask, can I get their number too? They didn't give it to me. Do you think I heard from them yet? No, right? And it's the same thing. If I refer somebody to you, I'm not going to just give them, say, hey, here's Troy's number, give them a call. I'm going to say, hey, Troy, here's their number, because I know that Troy is going to follow up. So get us permission to give them a call, and then we're going to follow up 100% of the time.
There are other ways to do that. So one of the ways we've had a lot of success is just an email template where the realtor can email your client and say, hey, Mr. Client, I'm Mitch, or say you use Mitch. Hey, here's Mitch. He's my lender. He's the best in town. Mitch, here's my client. Here's their number. They're looking to buy. I'm going to let y'all take it from here. The client knows they're going to hear from Mitch because they've been put on an email together with him. That works really, really, really well. Handing out the business card does not work well because what happens? People get home at night, they throw their jeans in the dirty clothes pile and they wash your business card. And then before you know it, they're like, did you hear from my client? I gave him your card like 3 weeks ago. And of course we haven't. And now there's no way to even figure out who that client was and where you met them and like piece that back together. So putting the ball in the lender's court, I don't know, we'll probably talk to twice as many of your clients when we have their name and number, maybe higher than that.
Yeah, so absolutely. No, when we have their name and number, our closing percentage, and once we get the application, our closing percentage goes way up. Okay. So the first thing we do is we add it to a lead tracker. If you're not using a lead tracker, you definitely should get one. Your loan officer has a template we can share with you. We use a simple Google document, right? It's shareable. I can look at it on my phone. Robert can have it on his phone. We can share it between our whole team. Okay. If you don't have that, I used to have a really complicated lead tracker system. It's called Sticky Notes. Anybody use that system still? Right? You write down a name and number, and then literally like 3 days later, you're like, who was that person? Were they looking to sell a house? Were they looking for a rental? I have no idea who that person was or who referred them to me. And then it's like really awkward to try to call them and say, hey, or sometimes you just don't. If you don't get them that first day, you kind of forget about it. And then add to a CRM. All right. Make sure if you have a CRM, it goes in there and it's as a lead, and you should have campaigns that go out for emails and things that'll drip on them if you have that email address, especially if you're doing cold leads like Boomtown stuff. Right. You're going to definitely follow up with them quickly. You need to have a system that's going to follow up with them for you because they're so cold and they close at such a low percentage. A big thing that we do, guys, that a lot of lenders don't do, and even coaching companies don't teach, is a live application. When you send us a person that wants to get qualified, we're going to call them and take all their information over the phone. Okay. Now, if they want the link, we absolutely do that. What we find is it does two things. It gives me 15, 20 minutes or my team 15, 20 minutes to build rapport, right? I'm going to ask all those questions and then we actually get accurate information. Has anybody ever sent out a link or had a client send out a link and then they send the application in and it's totally wrong? Callie's over here like, yep, all the time, right? I would say 75% of people who fill out a link online fill it out wrong. They just don't know the answers. They guess on the income.
We talk to a client and we ask them how much money they make. And it's like, I think it's about 55 a year, and like about $55,000 a year is not their income, right? They're saying, hey, I don't really know, but I don't want to say I don't know. So that tells us, okay, we need to dive in here further. We need to get a pay stub. Like we're going to have to figure this out because we have to get the exact number. If they're online doing it for themselves and they put in $55,000 and they keep moving, a lender's going to get that and go, cool, that's their income. They said it. Surely they know that it's right. When you're talking to them, you can get that sense of, dude, they are guessing here. I had a realtor one time tell me, I just had a deal not closed. 2 days before closing, we found out that one of the people had to pay child support. And she was like, but it's not really the lender's fault because when they filled out their application, they clicked no for child support, but the answer should have been yes. And I was like, probably they were filling it out on their phone at their lunch break, or maybe like while they were doing something else, and they accidentally clicked no instead of yes. And it never came up until like 2 days before closing. And that child support created a situation where they couldn't close. Now, it wasn't our loan, so I don't know. I was guessing a little bit, but like, if I ask you, do you pay child support? How many of y'all are going to get that question wrong? Right? But apparently when people do it online, it's easy to miss it. So it's just super important to have a conversation. It allows us to build rapport. It also allows us to build you up. If you've ever worked with a client that doesn't know you right off the bat, there needs to be a third-party person there going, oh, you're working with Jared. That's awesome, man. How do you know Jared? Oh, you met him at an open house. Let me just tell you, man, he's awesome. You're in great hands. They take great care of their people. You got lucky. You found a really good realtor to work with. How many of you think that would be helpful for your clients to hear how great you are? It's so helpful. And we think if they already know me, they know how great I am, which is probably true. But if they don't know you that well, they need to hear it from someone else, right? So that's part of the process. One of the first questions we ask, who referred you? how do you know them? Let me build that person up to make sure you know how great they are, and they're gonna take great care of you in this process. Can't do that with an application that's been sent via
Yeah.
a link.
And I just real quick on that, I've had conversations with clients that maybe called on a yard sign, called on, like, didn't know the person. And I say, how do you know Troy? And they're like, well, I just happened to, call him on a yard sign. There was a house I was interested in. And I tell him, like, well, he's been in the business like 20 years. He's awesome. All his clients love him. He's like one of the best realtors in town. So you should know you're in good hands. And they'll be like, oh, that's awesome. Cause I really didn't have a clue who I was talking to. Right. So that little thing, that's because you're on a team. They call Quicken Loans. Quicken Loans don't know you. Quicken Loans is trying to give them to their agents now. You know how that's working. So you got to be careful of that. We got to make sure we're working with teams. We set up a consultation. So when we get the information, we don't just right on the phone go over, hey, here's everything, right? We want to take all their information and we want to do all of our legwork. Our goal is to meet them the same day if we can. It's usually the next day. And we're going to set up a Zoom consultation as much as possible, or we'll do it over the phone if they can't, right? If they're at work and they can't do a Zoom. We used to do all these face-to-face, like people would drive to our office and sit down, and I enjoyed that. It was very time consuming, a little tedious, but I enjoyed actually shaking hands. But that Zoom is a big, big deal. Mitch does Zoom 100% of the time now. And what's the difference in doing a Zoom consultation versus a phone?
It's tenfold. I mean, because you're getting face to face, you can read expressions, you can build that rapport with the client.
Yeah.
Just as though you're in person. There's actually a lot of studies done that say it's almost virtually the same as meeting in person. I mean, it's just like beneath that.
Yeah. So if you're doing, meetings and you can't meet them face to face, everybody should write this stat down, by the way. People will close with the first realtor they meet 70% of the time. That's still accurate. It's the same for loan officers. Now,
You
they
say
don't-
meet.
Meet is face to face. Okay. How many realtors do people know? I think the average person knows 20 realtors. I've heard that stat, if not more, right? But they're going to close with the first one they meet. And whether you meet them at a house or you meet them at your office, I think if you're a lady, you should definitely meet them at your office first. But hey, instead of doing a phone call, if they want to do a consultation there across the country, set up a Zoom. They can see you, you're a real person, they're a real person, and do it that way.
Just a side note on that, obviously, when you get a phone call and you haven't met the client, the goal is to set an appointment, right? Like, side note, set an appointment. That is the main goal of that first conversation. Build some rapport and set a face-to-face appointment.
Yeah. Obviously, we get all the documents we need up front. We can pre-underwrite them. We're asking for everything on the first call, like, hey, here's your list of stuff. We want to get all their stuff going. So we make sure that when you're in the car with them, you're not wasting your time. A professional loan presentation. Okay, we're going to go through what that looks like. Who in here has a buyer's presentation and a listing presentation both? Cool. Some people have that. That's great. If you don't, take a look at what we have. It doesn't have to be what we do, but you should incorporate 2 or 3 things that we do. We educate them so we can set expectations, right? And we also are going to set them up for referrals. We're going to say, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. And if we do a great job, we're going to set you up to hopefully get referrals down the road. And then afterwards, which we're going to go through the presentation, we'll talk about the pre-approval email and how that works. So this is our presentation that we go through with every single client. And I think it's super helpful. I've had realtors sit through this with some clients. We're going to go through it really quickly so you can see some of the high points. But we sit down with the client on Zoom. We're going to either share our screen or we're going to email them over the documents. And we go through the home loan process. We talk about step by step. I'm going to take you straight through what I would go through with a client. I'm going to do it really quickly. The first step they already done is complete the application. Number 2, after we get them all pre-approved, they're going to get the pre-approval at the end of this call. The next step, after they're pre-approved, they're going to go out, find the house, submit an offer, and sign a contract. That's when we talk about the market. A year ago, what were we saying? The market's crazy. You're probably going to have to offer over list. We have the guarantee that can go with it. We had all this stuff to help them win the offer, right? We also talk about, again, about the agent, how they know this market. They're going to help you. What are we saying in this market? People are a little scared to buy a house, right? So we're saying, hey, now's a great time to buy. I've got a great story of a client that we just closed. He made an offer on a house for 1.2 million, didn't get it. Somebody beat him out, overbid or bid more, but they didn't close. Came back on the market. He bid 1.2 for it again, or 1.15, I think. And he didn't get it again. Somebody else outbid him again. This was in like April of last year and then July of last year. They didn't close. It came back on the market. He got it for $975. He saved $175,000 because the market's a little different, right? Who thinks it's a great time to buy a house if you're a buyer? 5 years from now, are they gonna be like, man, I'm so glad I bought in 2023? Okay, so we talk about that. Hey, go out, make offers. Offer less than list if you want to. Talk to your realtor, but you can also get closing costs if they need closing costs. We don't do your job, but we want to educate them and get them excited. Okay. After that, they're going to sign their initial loan application. That's what I'm going to talk about, educating them about our team. Every one of your loan officers, whoever you use, this is what we do. We talk about, this is where we actually process and close your loan. This is where rubber meets the road, and this is what makes us different. I've been doing this personally for 18 years, over 18 years, 100% referral based. Everybody in our office is 100% referral based loan officer. Clients love to hear that, right? They know if you're 100% referral based, you can't be doing a terrible job, right? Internet lender can do a terrible job and they got more leads coming in. I'm 100% referral based. I'm going to do a great job for you so that I can hopefully earn more business. All right. Second part of this, I'm going to survey you at the end of the process. Our goal is to be a 5-star review. If at any time in the process you don't feel like you're getting 5-star service, let me know so I can fix it. We're not perfect. And at the end of the process, we want you to go and give us a 5-star Google review. And I say, does that make sense? And people are like, man, you're 100% referral based and you're going to survey me at the end. You care what I think? Absolutely. And they love that. And I always tell them another big thing, how we do this, how we get our referrals, how we get our 5-star reviews. We process everything in-house. You're never going to dial a 1-800 number and talk to somebody in California with 5,000 people in an office. Who's ever talked to the 1-800 number lender when there's a problem? How's that go? Fun, isn't it?
Who you get on the phone.
Yeah, depends on who you get on the phone.
Right person.
So that's what
It's
clients.
always a different person, right? So if you call in tomorrow, you can get a new person that doesn't know you. You get to go through the whole process.
Yeah, that's what clients don't understand. Is it's easy to get pre-approved and say I'm going to use so and so, but who's your guy? I always use Quicken, right? Who's your guy at Quicken? Sure, you got a guy at Quicken. Pick up the phone, get something done. Nobody does, right? And they're like, "Huh, who's my guy? What does that mean? Like, who are you going to call when there's a problem?" Well, oh, I didn't think about that. They don't think about it until there's a problem. And in our business, when do the problems come up? Right now, when everybody's happy, or 2 weeks, right? When the appraisal came in short, when there's a problem, right? So you never have to dial a 1-800 number. We go through it and we talk about the appraisal, the title, the insurance. I educate them on that piece. They're going to receive weekly Tuesday updates once they're in contract. Every Tuesday, we're going to update you. Just so you guys know, if you're a realtor, you should be getting a call from us every Tuesday. If you have a client under contract, update the client, and we update the listing agent. How nice is it if you don't have to update the listing agent, right? Who does the listing agent call for updates normally? Buyer's agent. We'll do that for you. Knock that out for you. Goes to underwriting. They always have conditions. So I set that expectation. When you go through underwriting, you're going to have to sign stuff. You're going to have to provide updated information. Don't worry about it. It's just part of the process. That is the mortgage process. There's no way to get everything up front and not bug the client. They have to at least sign CDs and things like that. Go through underwriting closing, you sign the docs and get the keys. So from the time you get a contract to the time we close, normally it's a 30-day turn. If you need it in 2 weeks, we're closing them in 2 weeks all day long. We just closed one in 6 business days. Okay, we had an appraisal on that one complete. Everything on our closing is going to be contingent on how quickly we can get the appraisal. Does that make sense?
You want to talk about a full pre-approval slash TBD, right?
Yeah.
Now?
Go ahead.
So full pre-approval, like people do not know this. A pre-qualification, you can get a pre-qualification from Wells Fargo in 5 minutes, just going online and put in your info, and they'll send you an email with a pre-qual, literally within minutes. And it's not worth the paper that you would have to print it out on, right? The ink that is used. That pre-qual means the info you put in, we're going to take our best guess and say that it's accurate. And here you go. You're good to go buy a home. A pre-approval means your credit has been looked at and reviewed. Your income and assets have not only been talked about, but it's actually been looked at. So what we do is send your client a needs list, which we're going to go over in a second. We get all of their documentation. We actually review it. It does a couple of things. Number one, it shows who's committed to buying a home, because if they refuse to send in their pay stubs or their bank statements, how serious are they about buying a home, right? If they understand the importance of it and they still don't want to do it, they may not actually be that serious. But to get pre-approved, that is required. You got to get it. It allows us to move through the process more quickly because when we have all that stuff out of the way early and they find a home, we're already halfway through the process. Now, we do something called a TBD underwrite. We will have an underwriter look at the file and approve it prior to them having a contract. That's not typical in our industry. The reason that we do it is because literally it takes the client as far into the process as they can possibly be without having a contract. You can't do anything else other than have the file underwritten. Because without property, you can't get title, you can't get homeowners insurance, you can't get an appraisal, but literally everything else is done. So it allows us to close them as fast as possible. It also gives them the highest level of confidence to go buy because they know everything is done, right? The underwriter's already looked at it, they've approved it, everything's good. Literally the only thing I can do now is go find a home, get under contract, and then close on the house. So it allows them to move through the process with confidence and more quickly. And this is something that's easy to miss. When we know that a client is making an offer on a house, we'll call the listing agent on the behalf of the client. This is so big. As a listing agent, anybody ever been a listing agent and heard from a lender prior to the contract being accepted? Never happened.
Got some nevers, got some yeses. It
There's
doesn't
yeses.
make a difference.
Right? Do you want to hear from a big bank or an out-of-state lender, or do you want to hear from someone local to say, we've met with the client, we've reviewed all their docs, and they're already underwritten, and they're 100% fully ready to go? Would that help you make a decision with your seller on who to choose?
Absolutely.
So we offer this to everybody, and not every realtor we work with says, hey, will you call the listing agent? The client's making an offer. In a competitive situation, a lot of times it's the difference between your client getting the house accepted and not. And we all know that it's an emotional process for a buyer to make an offer and not win out, right? Like if you think you're going to buy a house and move into it and your kids are going to live there and then it doesn't get accepted, some buyers say, you know what, man, this is just too emotional. I'll just re-sign a lease and I'll just stay where I'm at. We want to get them under contract with as few offers as possible, right? So making that call to the listing agent might be the difference in them getting their first house under contract versus making 4 or 5 offers and finally getting one a few weeks from now, right? So that's huge. And there's nothing stronger than calling the listing agent and saying, hey, we've already underwritten their file. We've seen all their docs, like they're 100% ready to go. There's nothing else we can do. Oh, by the way, we're going to call you every Tuesday if we get this contract accepted with a status. We are local. Here's my number. If you need anything, of course, on a non-Tuesday, give me a call. Listing agents are like, okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to make sure I let my seller know. I hope they take this one because I really want to work with you guys. Like literally, that's the response we hear most of the time. So that helps the buyer get their contracts accepted more frequently.
Yeah, and we've had it a bunch of times where the listing agent or the buyer's agents called us and said, hey, they took our offer because they've worked with us in the past, or they know that y'all are local. They had 3 other offers, and I know there's not multiple offers right now a lot, but it makes a big difference having that local pre-approval letter. So guys, going through this, the next thing we do are the do's and don'ts. Every client, we go through the do's and don'ts. Who's had a client do something stupid in the process? I have. We go through the do's and don'ts. They still do some of it sometimes. And sometimes, but so as I go through this, I'll have some examples, but the first thing is don't apply for or open any new credit. Who's had a client? You got the new house coming up. I got to put a new car in that garage, right? You can absolutely do that after closing. Okay. That happens. Going through this will stop that most of the time. I've had clients call me many times like, hey, Lowe's has got the big sale this weekend. Can I buy the fridge on credit?
Yeah, I get a 10% discount if I get a credit card with Lowe's.
Please don't do that. Like that, you probably won't not close over it, but you might close late over that. Because now we got to get paperwork, we got to get the statement. It's
But
a
if you
mess.
go buy a car, you might not.
You might not close. Don't transfer money around or make cash deposits. We just have to know where your money's coming from, right? We may have put on the application that they're putting down 100,000. They're like, you know what? I think my grandmother's going to give me a $20,000 gift. Oh, that's new information. Let's make sure we have it documented. Documented up front, no problem.
What if it's cash?
Can't be cash. You guys know that, right? Mattress money, drug money, whatever kind of money, right? And I make that joke with people like, look, I know you're not selling drugs, but the government doesn't. They don't know if you're money laundering. You don't know where this cash came from. You cannot take cash and put it down. They just don't let it. And it's not my rule, it's the government's rule.
Are there any workarounds?
You can get a gift and figure out all that stuff, but you can't put cash in the bank. If you put 20,000 cash in the bank and there's a $20,000 cash deposit, they will subtract that from your balance, calculating your.
So the reason I say that is one of the reasons it's important is how many of you think have had a client say, I don't want to get quite pre-approved yet because I don't want to buy until May. Never happened to anybody in the room?
Happened this week.
Happens all of the time. I talk to realtors and like, yeah, I got a client, they don't want to buy till May, so they don't want to start the process yet. If they have cash right now and they deposit it today, y'all know that we need 2 months of bank statements prior to closing. So what happens to January's bank statement? In May, we don't need it because we need May's bank statement and April's bank statement. But if we don't meet with them until April and then they make that cash deposit, guess what? They can't close on a house in May. Does that make sense? Getting pre-approved early on helps us help the client avoid some of these mistakes. You cannot get pre-approved too quickly because when your client hears this information, they get to make better decisions with their money, with their credit, with their debts, right?
And I think that's why it's also important to not try to pre-qualify them before getting them to a lender. Let the lender do that part of it. Because you do that, you kind of hear, oh, May, okay, you're fine, or, or try to ask some questions. Like, that's really what we
Great
need to
point.
do.
Mitch is saying, don't do too much pre-qualifying, right? Don't dig into their finances too much because people don't always know. There's usually a way to make it work. We can get a cosigner. There's all kind of good stuff we can do. If they're willing, we want you to screen them as far as they're a real person, right? Please don't send over the Boomtown list and half the numbers are wrong, that kind of stuff. But if you've talked to them and they're real, get them to us because we never tell anybody no. We do have to tell people not right now, right? Hey, you got 1, 2, and 3. You just opened a business in the last 6 months. You got to wait a little bit. We tell them not right now, but we hardly ever have to tell somebody, like never do we tell somebody no. We give them a plan. It could be a 2-year plan. Most of the time, it's only a 3-6 month plan. But if you have somebody that's a live person, we want to talk to them because we're going to get them in that system, right? Don't forget, over the next 12 to 18 months, 10 of those 25 prospects closed that you
Well,
missed. 12 of them closed. You got 2 of them on average, another 10. So if you'll get them to us, we're going to put them in our system. We're going to help you follow up. And our goal, it's not going to be immediate. Right? You're not going to close them the next month. You got to nurture these folks. And sometimes it's a lot longer process.
And if they're not waiting to buy until May or June, by May or June, when that comes around, if you haven't spoke to them or had a consistent follow-up, you may lose them
That's right.
as well.
Because they know 20 agents and they're driving down the road and they're on realtor.com.
And I'm sorry, I have to mention this. Every time somebody tells you they're going to buy in June, they're actually going to buy in March. Like once their brain is activated to buy a house, they will see an open house, walk into it and be under contract that day. And you missed out on it because you were like, oh, they're going to buy in June. So I'm going to call them back in May, right? Because they told me June. Surely they're not going to lie to me. They're not intentionally lying to us. Once they start thinking about it, they can't stop thinking about it and they'll end up making a decision without us. So you can't start the process too soon.
Don't test drive a car unless you're ready to buy it.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. I sold cars for just a little while after college. Once they test drive, they're like, hey, we're going to buy in the next 2 months. 2 days later, they had a car. Whether it was with us or somebody else, once they start test driving, they're going to buy a car. Guys, going through this real quick. Don't miss any payments. Obviously, don't forget to tell us about any other properties. Hey, do you have any land or anything weird that you've inherited? Don't change your job or quit your job. Who's had that happen? Right in the middle of the process. Hey, I got a new job. Hope you're making the same kind of money. Don't throw your income and asset statements. We have to have the most recent. Don't forget to ask if you have any questions. Then we go ahead and prep them a little bit. Little joke, number 10. The most important of the 10 commandments here. Don't forget to tell all your friends and family about us. Now, most of the time they get that. That's a little bit of a joke. But guys, we're trying to say, listen, we're going to do a great job for you. Don't forget that we want referrals.
And I'll just say,
Go ahead.
when you're going through this with a client, it's funny how their eyes will go and like stop on one, and then they'll say, "Hey, about the job thing. So I'm thinking about switching. I've got an interview next week. Actually, is this going to be a problem? Is that going to be a problem? Maybe. The answer is maybe, right? So is it in the same field? Is the income going to be a similar? Like, are you going to be getting a salary at this new position? Maybe they can switch their job. Often it's like, well, no, it's going to be 100% commissioned in the same field. And it's like, well, hey, you need to buy a home and then make this job change, right? And don't put in a 2-week notice prior to closing, because the day before closing, we're going to verify employment. And one of the questions is, what's the likelihood of continued employment? If that person says, well, she actually just put in her 2-week notice, her last day is February the 5th. It's like, you're not getting a mortgage, right? So that can kill your deal. We get to have that conversation right up front if the client says, well, hey, let's talk about it. Does that make sense? This just hedges against problems that can come up. And it's crazy how often the client sits there and goes, let me tell you, I've got cash at home, or it's cash that my uncle has that he was going to give me. And we have to walk them through the steps. of how to get through these issues that could be issues in the future.
These are just lists of documents we asked for. This is a standard list. We tailor this on an email to the client. Not every client needs, first time homebuyer class. Not every client needs VA paperwork. So we're gonna tell them exactly what they need, but we want the full list just so they see it. Because they may have a question about, oh, hey, whatever. They'll ask you that question.
And we can get you a copy of this packet if you
Yeah.
would like it, to one, have, or number two, to kind of like, these 2 pages are great to give to your client, even from the real estate side.
Then my favorite one is the Uncle Sam document. Everybody knows who Uncle Sam is. It says Uncle Sam wants you guys remember wants you to join the military. Well, in the mortgage business, he wants you to give him more paperwork, right? So that's the reason I tell people I personally hate paperwork. I'm not good at paperwork. I have people on my team that are great at it, but that's the reason we have to bug you for this stuff. Like I have people like, man, why are you asking for my granddad's bank statement when he's giving me a gift? I'm like, listen, I don't want it. I agree. We shouldn't even have to have it. The government requires we do it. And there's no rule. There's no way around it. Right. I don't ask for anything I don't need, but that helps people understand. Okay, this is the bank. It's like, medical stuff, whatever. This is something that's required by the government. And that's a great document to hand out, like Clint said. Meet your lender, right? This is my stuff. Every lender in here has this, and it goes over kind of a bio, what you're doing, the team sheets, kind of who's who. If you talk to Andrea, what she's going to do for you. If you talk to our processor, what she's going to do for you, that kind of stuff. That way people know what's going on. I go through this really quickly, this part with the client. Don't just take our word for it. Some testimonials are on here. This is notes for your loan. This is 2 big things that we go over with everybody. That's a huge help for realtors. Okay. I added this because realtors requested, like, hey, I have this come up. Like, these are questions that come up over and over and over. I added this to the presentation. The closing costs and prepaids. It's a negotiating point. I've got an example. If the sale price is $200,000, you ask the seller for $6,000. They're actually selling you the house as a net to them for $194, right? So it's a negotiating point. There's 7 offers on the house a year ago. Probably not getting 3% in closing costs.
Chris created it several years ago when you could buy a house for $200,000.
Yeah, I don't change it. Hey, I still get some of these every now. I got one right now that we're working on in Knoxville. So I haven't changed it. Yeah, I just leave it there. It's several years ago, but yes. But that's helpful to clients. You're like, hey, okay, there's 3 other offers. I can't ask for as much, right? And the next one, and everybody should be telling their clients this. If you don't know this stat, write it down. For every $1,000 in home price, it's about $5 per month on a payment. Right now, with rates higher, it's a little over $5. Okay, when rates go a little lower, it's a little less than $5. That means for 10 grand, it's $50 a month. Okay, as lenders, there's nothing that gets on my nerves worse than the client who calls me and says, hey, what's the payment on 365? And I tell them, they call me back. What if I offer 367? Really? It's $10, right? And I don't even calculate it. I'm like, it's $5 per thousand roughly. It's $10, right? We don't even have your insurance quote yet. We don't know what the exact payment's going to be, right? So you can easily do this with your client when they're out there in the field and you're looking at a house that's 400. Maybe this was a competitive one. Maybe we need to offer 405 because I think there's other people making offers. Man, what's that going to do to my payment? How much is $5,000 on a payment, roughly? $25. $25, right? If somebody's making a decision on a payment on $25, they probably need to back off the price 30 or 40 grand. It shouldn't be that tight on a payment. Does that make sense? So that should be really helpful. This is notes for their loan. They can print it out and say, write down all the stuff if they want to. But those 2 things is something that you should absolutely steal and have in your buyer's packet to explain to people, because it comes up every single time. If you don't go over it up front, you're going to go over it sometime. Might as well go over it up front. Yep.
And I'm sorry, if you're building a team and hiring a buyer's agent, if you go ahead and create this now, when you hire the next person, you have it to give to them versus trying to train them on all this stuff and all the things in your brain. If you were to hire somebody today and say, I'm just going to train them on everything in my brain, that'll be easy, right? You have like 10 million things in your brain. You can't train on that. This gives you something that you know exactly how to train on. Maybe it's contract to close. Somebody's going to be with you full time. Maybe they're just going to do contract to close on files and they're going to be like a per file person. You can still give them what you want them to go over because you know exactly what you want them to go over. So having this ready to go makes that process much, much easier. So
yeah, and there's one more that I'm super excited about. We're working on adding to this, and it's a wealth building page. Okay, if somebody buys a house on an FHA loan, a $350,000 house, Okay, they put down 3.5%. What is that, like $11,000, $12,000? If they hold that house for 15 years instead of paying rent, and I know there's a lot of factors here, get a 4.5% appreciation. What's Nashville gotten for the last 10? 7 or 8, 10 on average, probably. So if they just get 4.5% appreciation, what's the difference in their net worth? Rent versus own for 15 years on a 350 house. Nobody knows the answer because you have to have a calculator, right? It's kind of complicated. Who guesses? What's a guess? 400,000. Gotcha. Anybody else got a guess? Really close. The difference is with the appreciation and with the pay down, because every month you're paying down the balance of your mortgage, it's $421,000. If you show somebody, hey, you can keep paying rent for the next 15 years, or you can own a house, and the difference is $400,000 to your net worth, you think that would get them a little excited? Buy a house? Our goal, guys, is to get them to a level 9 out of 10, right? It's your job to get them to the 10 to where they're writing the offer. But if we can get them to a 9, like, oh, I can actually do this. I've got a plan. We've got the closing costs. We're going to, we'll talk about 2-1 buy downs and all that fun stuff. We can make this happen. We want to get them ready to go buy a house. Now, the next piece of that is I'm working on a plan that we're going to show them. If you buy that first house with an FHA at 3.5%, you guys know after 12 months, what can they do? They can turn that into what? A rental property. Buy another house with just 5% down. You can't do an FHA again, but you do a 5% down conventional. Now you got a rental property that's creating equity and a primary. Let's say that they did that again. They can make that one a rental property after 12 more months. Got 2. If they do that and they own 4 rental properties in 20 years, they're millionaires. If you can help somebody buy 3, 4 rental properties, they hold it long enough, they'll become a millionaire. Now people are like, that's like, really? The math isn't, obviously that we're assuming a 4% appreciation rate, but a 4% appreciation rate with the amount of money the government prints, that's probably going to happen. Okay, so we're working on that to get them to that level. Any questions on the process that we take them through? Is that helpful to see what your clients go through? Who can steal some of it? Awesome. Steal some of it. We'll get you the soft copies. We have these are PDFs, but we can email you the entire thing in a copy that you can take. I don't care. Just put your logo on it.
Whoever invited you here, just set up a one-on-one with your loan officer and tell them exactly what you want, and we'll get it to you in an editable format or a format that you can then take and basically copy and paste and create it into your own format.
Yeah. So next, guys are going out. They're pre-approved at this point. You're going to get a pre-approval email that's a Word document pre-approval. Who likes getting that works with us? Who likes getting that Word document pre-approval that you can edit the amount? Super easy, right? The reason I did that is because in times when they were making 20 offers, I didn't want to do 20 PDFs. And if you're smart, you can edit a PDF anyway. It's not that hard. So I want to make it as easy as I can for you. Now, if you want to go way up in price, you got to call us, right? If they're pre-approved at 400, they found one at 430, you probably want to call and say, hey, does debt ratio work? Let's look at the taxes, because there's never a hard and fast number on a pre-approval. You guys know that. Because taxes are different on every single house. Insurance is different on every single house. HOAs can kick people out. I've had people pre-approved for 250, right? They've got a budget, and then they go find a 250 condo with a $350 HOA. Does that work? No, right? That HOA is going to kick them out. So we'll put that in a Word document, make it easy for you. As they're shopping for a house, guys, we call our leads that are pre-approved almost every week. Now, once they've been pre-approved for 3 or 4 months and they're a little bit cooler, we're probably gonna get a call every other week from our team or from your loan officer. On Wednesdays, that's what we do. We call our lead tracker, we call it PALs, our PALs, pre-approved and lookings, right? They should be your best friends, pre-approved and looking. You wanna call them every week. How's it going? Have you found anything? Do you have any questions? Is there anything we can do for you? By the way, who else could you introduce us to that might be looking to buy a house? Okay, so every time we talk to your client, we haven't talked about this yet. Every time we talk to your client, we're asking them for a referral, right? What happens if I get a referral that's ready to go look for a house? Send them back, right? Chris Haynes is in the back like, send them to me. Always, that's right. And that's our job. My job is to help you get those referrals back and help you out. Now, not every single client's gonna give us a referral, but we're gonna ask on every call, right? And we're going to talk about a little script with that. We do a things to do in Nashville email. Who gets our things to do in Nashville email? Cool. Now, it's probably spam to you guys. You guys know what's going on in Nashville. But what I would encourage you to do,
Does anybody like getting it or hate getting it? I've had a lot of clients tell me, hey, I
Love it.
love that y'all do that. Like, don't ever take me off that list, which kind of surprised me because my negative mindset was another email, like people aren't gonna like it. But I've
They
had
love it.
so many people tell me they like it.
what people don't like is a bunch of statistic reports about why they should use me for their loan. So that has zero to do about real estate and zero to do about mortgages.
So do I look at it?
We got a lead this morning. Thanks to Nashville.
Yeah, it's
So
funny.
Yeah,
People
it's fun, too.
apply to the things to do in Nashville and say, hey, I just saw a house and I'm thinking about buying a rental or whatever. And it's like, okay, they replied to that email. They didn't start a new email, but we know they're getting that email every Friday.
now I want to make a little point here. That is not a canned email that we buy. Pamela in the back, wave at everyone, say hello. She
That's
does
Pamela, The
That's
cheery
Pamela.
one in the back.
that. She does that every week, guys. She goes out to several websites and we don't put Preds games and Titans games. Everybody knows that's going on. We're trying to find something cool, right? The little cheese tasting thing or the play for the kid or something cool like an art festival, right? We'll put something cool in there so people can, maybe it's in Thompson Station, maybe it's in, a little further out and it's cool stuff. Guys, I'm telling you all this, not because it's really cool for us. Take that email, take all my stuff off of it and forward it to your database from you. You've put 2 minutes of effort into it and now you're following up with it and it works. Mitch, you get replies back from it. Clint gets replies back from it. They got to leave this morning. Like all you got to do is you blank carbon copy your database, right? You don't want to carbon copy them when they all get it and they can.
Or send it through your CRM if it can do it.
You can send it through your CRM, right? Take that email and use it. That's the little things that we're trying to add value, but it will take you 2 minutes, right? You got to set a reminder. Hey, Thursday morning, it comes out every Thursday from us. Thursday morning about 10:30, go find that email and get it out.
All we're trying to do is stay top of mind. We want our clients remembering who we are and what we do. And that should be your goal too. It doesn't always have to be real estate related, but if they see your face and name, whenever it comes time to do real estate, they're going to call you.
Monthly mailers, we mail every month. That's something that we do. While they're in process, they're going to be getting that stuff too. And you should be doing it too, in my opinion. An evidence of success. Hey, this is how we help somebody. A letter of the heart. Clint does one, I think, monthly. He writes about what's going on with his family. And I do one every 2 to 3 months. And that keeps you in front of your clients and that'll help keep people that are pre-approved in the stable. Yep.
Yeah. So what's going to help conversion? Number one is that pre-approval from lead up until consultation. After that, it is what we do from that consultation through contract. Those 2 stages is where we help you close more deals. That's why our conversion is as high as it is, because we're super, super active. Once a contract comes in and we sign somebody up, all the things that we do is to make sure that they have all the things we do is to make sure they have a great experience and they come back to us in the future and that they refer us in the future. But closing more deals comes from those first 2 stages. Does that make sense? Think about that in your own business as well. How many times do you get a contract signed, buyers under contract, and then that client never closes with you? It almost never happens, right? A listing is in the yard, contract comes in, now we've got a contract on that listing. Even if that deal falls out, the client doesn't leave you, right? What happens is you talk to the client on the listing and then you don't follow up great for a couple of weeks. And then when you do follow up to say, hey, are you ready to sign the listing paperwork? They're like, oh yeah, there's a guy, at church that I'm using. It's like, man, maybe if I'd have just followed up a little bit better, I would have gotten that deal instead of losing it. So conversion happens in these first 2 stages. The next set of stages just helps with mainly with the client experience, getting referred, the client coming back to us in the future.
Yeah. So the next is the contract, right? You guys send over a contract. They're ready to go. We can close in 2 weeks. We touched on that. If we can get an appraisal back, we can make that happen. The appraisal is a big thing. If you're selling a house, it's way out of town. Sometimes those appraisals are a little bit slower. I would not write a super fast closing in, Manchester, for example. But we call you and your client every Tuesday.
And the listing agent.
And the listing agent. So updates, so you don't have to do that. This is a huge deal, guys. If you're doing a Wilson County or a Davidson County or any of the surrounding counties, we have 5 appraisers that get those appraisals. We know them. They're my buddies. They come to they taught one of our lunch and learns. Scott has done that. So how many people have had bad appraisals done on houses? Yeah. And does it kill the deal? It can, right? Our guys, I mean, everybody has an opinion, but they're on our board because we picked them. They've stayed on our board because they've done a good job, if that makes sense. We have complete control over who's on our board. We can't dictate which one it goes to. We have to send it through a system, and one of our 5 guys will get it. I have an example. The realtor's not here today, of one that the house was in a mess. It failed the appraisal, and it should have. It was condition was terrible, needed tons and tons of work. But the main thing was the roof was leaking, right? And most banks would have seen that appraisal. We turned it down. We're like, we can't do this. Like, Fannie Mae will not insure this loan. They're not going to do this loan. But I called the appraisers like, hey man, what do we need to do? What needs to happen to this house to get it up to where it could close, where it would be a C4 instead of a C5, which is a technical condition. He said, I need a roof letter from a roofer that says this roof is not leaking, because I can see old leaks. I can't tell if it is leaking, but it's in bad shape. So I said, okay, let me see what I can do. And this was about an hour and a half of conversation between him and my underwriter trying to figure this out. Send a roofer out. It did have leaks, had $3,500 worth of leaks. It appraised for $70,000 more than they're paying for it though. You think they wanted the house, even though it had leaks? They paid that roofer $3,500 to fix the leaks. Yes, the buyer did, before it closed. The appraiser went back out, changed the reports. Smart investment, right? He changed the report. Now that loan's clear to close. And we're still working on a seller problem. We'll see if that actually closes. But it has nothing to do with us or the buyer. It's on the other side.
You guys manufactured home in Smith County in under 3 weeks this year.
Yeah.
Or last year, I guess.
So we had a manufactured home in Smith County under 3 weeks. Please don't write a 3-week contract on a manufactured house in Smith County. Yeah, but it can happen.
During the holiday.
Guys, we have 3 underwriters that get all of our files, right? These underwriters aren't, they're somebody I don't know, I never talked to. Like, I know my underwriters. If there's a problem, I pick up the phone and say, hey, Linda, what's going on with this? Can we talk about it? What do we need to do to overcome that? And we make it happen.
These bottom 3 are all about relationships. Like, if an appraiser, there's an issue, we can have a conversation. Typically, when there's an appraisal issue, the problem is the appraiser won't talk to anybody, so there's no fixing it. The appraiser will communicate, we can sometimes fix it, or at least know exactly why it's not fixable. It's the same thing with underwriting, it's the same thing with closer. You want a relationship with all of those people because they're critical components in the process. And because we have relationships in all of these areas, it allows us to continue to make the experience for the client. A lot of times the client doesn't know what's going on, right? Like, everything's moving along. We're doing things in the background, realtor doing things in the background. The client thinks it's just going smoothly, which is what we want. But having those relationships is what allows us to keep on moving smoothly. What else you got?
You talk about the closer?
In-house closer.
Yeah, in-house closer. So we get a clear to close. I can have docs out a lot of times in 30 minutes. Like, I can just say, hey, Angela, can you please work on this one next? It needs to go. That usually doesn't happen. Guys, we're getting packages out 1 day ahead of time, 90% of the time for the last 6 months. So if your loan's closing on Friday, 90% of the time the package is there on Thursday on a purchase. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't happen because we're waiting on that final appraisal inspection, and we wanted 100, but it's just that there's things that happen that are out of our control. But I cannot stand when it's closing at 4 o'clock on Thursday that we send a package over at 2:30. Anybody ever had that happen? So that doesn't happen. When it does, everybody knows it because we're waiting on the appraiser to do something. Very, 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 very seldom does that happen. We're getting packages out a day ahead of time, a lot of times 2 days ahead of time. So kind of going into loan programs, this is kind of a sidestep from the process of obviously getting to closing. The biggest thing that loan officers don't do is structure loans correctly, right? All this information comes in, and it's really easy to mess up a pre-approval, maybe put the client in something that's not the best program. We only have loan experts. Our loan officers know what they're doing. We have help. We have loan officer assistants and things like that, loan partners that are at a high level. So we're going to structure it up front correctly. And then also, guys, talking about the plan, we don't tell people no, we tell them not right now. That's the credit repairing and the rapid rescore, right? So we do have a credit repair.
What's the difference between credit repair and rapid rescore?
Rapid rescore, a lot of times I can look at a credit report and say, oh, you have a 619 credit score. we really need a 640 for this program. And if you pay off this one credit card, it's $300. That'll get you 40 points. You'll be at 660. Like we can do that in 3 days. Okay. Once they pay it off, they tell us it's paid off. We can have a new score in 3 days. Most banks do not allow for either one of those things.
Wow.
They don't want the loan. They would rather not do the loan. They're risk averse than to, because they think, hey, this is really a 619 credit score person. Even though you can get them to 660, they're really a 619 because that's what we pulled. And most banks, and there's local banks, biggest competitor here locally, will not allow them to do a rescore. And sometimes they have mistakes on their credit report. Like there's a mistake, like, can we not get this removed and get a new score? Nope, you got to wait 120 days to repull.
So that first credit report sticks with the file until it's expired.
120 days.
With us, we're able to get a repull, get that score up. Now we'll go down to a 580. What Chris he said, but I hope you didn't miss it. From 619 to 640 or 660 allows us to do a better loan program. So maybe they can put less money down, or maybe they're going to get a better rate or qualify for more house, right? So getting the score up just puts them in a better position, right? We can go down to 580 and do 100% VA loan or a 96.5% FHA loan. There are banks, Chase at one point wouldn't do anything below 720. Like, you know how many people have below a 720 and should be able to get a loan, but they can't go to Chase and get that loan. There's a local bank that's, a really nice bank. They're good people. At one point, their minimum credit score was 680. How many people are they turning down that have a 675 credit score that we would absolutely love to do a loan for? But the client doesn't know that. They're not telling the client, hey, your score is 675. You should just go down the road and talk to an actual mortgage lender because they'll qualify you all day long. No, they're just telling them, hey, you don't qualify. So it's super important that your clients are talking to a lender who's aggressive in those areas.
Yeah. Real quick, guys, loan programs. We do all the loan programs. USDA, FHA, THDA, VA, conventional, you name it, we can do it. Manufactured houses, homes for heroes. If you have a veteran, teacher, nurse, we can do, we do a credit for those types of folks. We got bank statement and self-employment loans, and then the buy downs. You guys have all heard about the buy downs, right? A 1-1 buy down, a 2-1 buy down, a 3-2-1 buy down. We do all that stuff. We have the free refinance promise, like the no closing costs from the lender. So if they do a loan with us now, we refinance them in a year, we'll waive our lender fees when that time comes.
Hey, does anybody not know what buy downs are? Surely somebody in here doesn't exactly know what that is. Anybody?
I was going to ask you to, if you can go into that detail and also those different programs.
Yeah, if you'll email us afterwards, we can get you a lot of information. And there's some stuff in your folder too, guys. The 2-1 buy downs in there. So 3-2-1 buy down, guys. Let's say the rate today is, just say 6%. They can buy that rate down to 5, 4, actually 3% for the first year. It goes to 4% for the second year, 5%, and then 6% from that point on. A 2-1, it would go from, if the rate's 6, they would start with 4, go 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so that allows people to get into a house with a really low payment for that first year or two and help them make the decision to go ahead and buy now, because we believe at some point in the next year or two, rates will probably be a little better and they'll be able to refinance. So
Chris, what if the buy down's like 15 grand? Why not just lower the purchase price 15 grand?
yeah, so you can take the buy down $15,000 to lower the purchase price from the seller, or you can lower the price of the house. But it's going to save them a whole lot more in that monthly payment. And here's the big deal. People think, man, if I do the buy down, what happens if I sell the house? Or what happens if I refinance? All that money is set aside and that will lower your payoff. Okay. So if the seller pays $15,000 towards your buy down and 6 months later you refinance, like I didn't get all the benefit, I only got $4,000 of the benefit. You'll get that extra $11,000 on your payoff. It'll drop the payoff. So
That makes sense. So that money is set in escrow and it's used to subsidize the payment. So if you do refinance, it just lowers the balance. That $15,000. So going back to what he was saying, 15 grand lower price would be a difference in payment of about $75 a month. A $400,000 house, a buy down, like a 2-1 buy down, might save them $550, $600 a month, right? So that first year, your payment's going to be $600 lower, or you could lower the price and have a payment $75 lower. For most buyers, they want to see that payment go down. And then the goal, hopefully we're going to do some refinances in the next 12 to 18 months. Hopefully rates come down. we're gonna refinance a lot of these people that have bought. And I'll just say, what we have seen, when rates were, 3%, 4%, how many buyers were trying to buy each house? A ton, right? The competition was crazy. People were having to go above and beyond to get contracts accepted. I think that's gonna be the exact same thing 6 months, a year, 2 years from now. If rates go back down to 4.25, we're gonna see multiple offers on every house. So your buyers can buy now with less competition, get the deal that they want. You only buy the home once. The terms of the purchase happen once. You can get any refinance rate in the future that exists. Rates go down, we can always refinance that client and get them next year's rate if rates are at 4.5%, right? So keep that in mind, and that's something you should be using when you're talking to your clients, that buying now is smart because you can get a better deal on the purchase. You can always refinance it if rates do go down. But if you want to wait a year until rates go down, cool. You rent for another year and you're going to have a ton of competition when you go to buy that exact same house. You might just pay an extra $100,000 for it, right? That's the conversation we need to be having.
And then this is kind of like after closing, right? So we got the deal closed, everybody's good to go. And happy clients are more likely to refer both of us forever. If they have a bad experience, whether you referred that lender or they went to Quicken Loans, if the experience was bad, they're less likely to refer their agent. Does that make sense? It doesn't matter if it was your fault or not. It's just like that transaction wasn't great. They're just less likely to refer us. So this whole process is to get them into closing, get that closing gift to them, survey them afterwards, and hopefully you can get referrals for the next 5 years from that person. You get repeat business from that client. Again, we talked about this before. We ask for a referral on every call, right? From the very first call, when we're taking an application, we get all their information. Hey, by the way, who else do you know that you could introduce us to that's buying a house, right? And that's one thing that I want everybody to write down. Who else can you introduce me to? It's a great way to ask for a referral that's very non-confrontational. It's not, it's not salesy. It's like, hey, is there anything else I can do for you? Everything's going great. Is there anything I can do for you? No, you're good. Awesome. Who else could you introduce me to that I could help? Just like I'm helping you. Has anybody ever heard that term? I heard that from a sales coach, and I was like, man, this is a really good way to say it. So everybody, please write that down. Who else can you introduce me to? And you'll be surprised. People are like, oh yeah, my brother-in-law's doing something. My cousin's doing something. Again, we survey clients and our agents. So when we close with you, Brandy is now calling all of our agents after closing, and we want to make sure we're surveying you. One of the things that we're going to work on is getting you a 5-star review. Now, what we have to go is with all our agents, we need to get, where do you want to review? Some agents want Zillow, some want Google, some want, different places. Our goal is, if the client was super happy, is to share your link and say, hey, you're super happy with Troy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send Troy's link over. Please give him a review. It's very important for his online presence to get Google reviews. If you want us to do that, we're calling clients anyway for surveys. We can do that for you. We just need to know where you want those reviews to go. And then follow with your clients forever, right? That's what we do. They're going to go get our mail. They're going to get our weekly things to do in Nashville email. We do 4 or 5 client events a year. The next one we're doing, what's the next one we're doing?
One of it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Movie day? Cool. So we're doing movie day in when? We think April. All right, it's not exact yet. We'll have a movie day in April. We've got a huge thing we're doing at the park in June. We're going to have Charlie Daniels Park rented out. We're going to have a band. We're going to have food, all kinds of fun stuff. So we do all that stuff and we invite people. 90% of our clients can't come, but they love to invite. And then the ones that can, it's a great event. You get to hang out with folks and see everybody. So even more value, guys. These are a few things that we do. HomeBot, we put your clients into HomeBot. They get an update. It's from Zillow. I'm sorry. It's like Zillow for agents. Sorry, it's not from Zillow. It's like Zillow for agents. So it keeps your clients off of Zillow. Okay. If you're not using HomeBot, I highly recommend it. Who in here is using HomeBot? Cool.
Somebody who's using it, what do you think about it?
It's good. I just love it. Yeah, it's the viewability, the usability, the accessibility.
How much do you pay a month? $300 a year. So if you get one deal in the next 40 years from it, it'll pay for itself. So just one deal in the next 40 years. If you're still in the business, it'll pay for itself. You'll get multiple deals a year if you are using it. It just keeps you in front of your clients. I had a coach one time, he said anything that costs less than, I think it's $50 a month is free. Like, we make a lot of money when we close a deal. So any system, it's $25 or $35 a month or $50 a month. Like, it's free, right? So think about it that way. And if you want to talk more about HomeBot, just get with your, the lender that invited you. It's a home run. It's a no-brainer.
And you can piggyback with us, okay? So we pay for the bulk of the price. It's $25 for you. List reports, we do those. We pay for that. I believe it's completely free for agents. So when you list a house, it'll give you all kinds of print materials, email materials, and all you have to do is put in the information and it pulls it all.
List reports.
Yeah, I mean, I don't share as much on it as the custom website and stuff for the particular property.
It's very easy, right?
It's very
Yeah,
easy.
it's all basic.
It gives you a ton of stuff that if for you to go produce all that yourself would take you
Right.
hours, right? And it's free. So but you do have to sign up with a lender. So jump on board with your lender with us, hopefully, and do that. And then Relocator. That's something we just started using. And we signed your client up for this when they are under contract. And Relocator will help them coordinate the move. Okay. It'll tell them who all the local trash pickup companies are. If they want to do Comcast, they can do it through Relocator. And they said it saves them like 11 hours on the phone. If they'll go through Relocator, it'll save them a ton of stuff, and it gives them a discount, and it gives them a free Ring
Ring
doorbell camera. Okay, so they get a free $250 camera just for doing it. Plus, they're going to save money on all the services and make it streamlined. So just a little ad where they're not asking you like, hey, who picks up trash at my house, and who's the best for internet out here?
So we set clients up after they're under contract, like at what point in the process? So as soon as they go under contract, we set them up to start getting that. It's free, it's easy, and they get a bunch of value from it.
Yeah, and I think that's about
Yeah,
it.
so, questions and really, any takeaways that you got from this?
We got a couple books to give away.
Yeah, we'll get to the books in just a second. Any questions on this or the takeaways about
We
like, the
learned something today.
process?
They can share. What'd you learn? Jerry's got
I
something.
hadn't considered using the things that do in Nashville. and they said it. What I have done, I'll look at it every week because I know, but when people are coming in town, whether they're agent, clients, or even friends, and they're like, what is there to do? That's where I go because it's already there.
Yeah.
So I have used it in that way. I do like the idea of just like changing it up a little bit and using it for my clients.
Yeah.
So that's great.
So stealing the things to do an actual email. Everybody should take that. Like, if you're not getting that email,
I'm gonna use it.
if you're not getting that email, let us know. We'll make sure you're on the list to get it. What's another takeaway, guys?
Making an effort to quantify our conversations and phone calls and where, those prospects are. Haven't done that. And, in your head, you're like, oh, I've talked to so many people, but you really don't have a definite number. Like, okay, 20%, 10%. So I appreciate hearing that. I also appreciated seeing all the effort that you guys put in on your end towards our clients. I knew you guys do a lot, and all the leads that I've sent your way, they are very happy about the experience, but sitting here and hearing what you actually do, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that goes into it. Yeah, like that's why we say sitting in on a consultation, so you can see it, because one of the things I do want to touch on is like how to refer. But knowing what the client is going to see makes it easier, I think, when you say, hey, I want to connect you with my person, and then how to do that, because you know that they're going to get a ton of value. I know one of the things we talked about earlier was that warm email handoff. Who struggles at all making that handoff client to lender, like making that referral? Does anybody in here struggle with that at all? Do you ever get that? Oh, I'm good. I'm pre-approved with my bank. Like I'm set.
That a lot, but I always talk about like, how I can help with the transaction with somebody I know over the internet. Like I use the Walmart analogy. You ever go to Walmart, go to a customer service line? How's your experience? Think about that when you're calling quick. So,
Yeah.
Not quick, but quick and loans.
Yeah.
Mix.
Rocket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So you use the relationship as helping to make that referral.
I can sit on your desk.
He has.
Never.
He probably has.
Standing up and down.
I've
jumping up and
never
down.
been that, no, you've never disappointed me, but I could.
Yeah.
There's others that.
So that's super important. Like, I know, because I talk to realtors on a daily basis, right? That say, yeah, I tried to get somebody over to you, but they're pre-approved already. Oh, that's good. That's great. Who are they pre-approved with? Well, I didn't ask them. I don't know. I didn't ask them, right? That's a great question. When you're talking to a client, I'm already pre-approved. I don't need to be pre-approved. I'm already pre-approved. Oh, that's awesome. Who are you pre-approved with? They can't think of it right off the bat. They don't know the name of the person. It's a red flag, right? They say, it's a Regions Bank. I bank at Regions, and oh, awesome. I just need to know the loan officer because I'll need to get a copy of that pre-approval letter. It was like, I think it was 9 months ago that I got pre-approved. Are they still pre-approved? Nope. Do you think they are? Yeah, you think they are because you didn't dive in and ask a couple more questions to figure out who's pre-approved you. Can I get that letter? Oh, it was 9 months ago. We talked about it earlier. You're pre-approved for like 90 to 120 days. Digging in and asking a couple more questions gives you the ability to say, I know that a pre-approval is only good for a couple of months, 3 or 4 months. So we either need to get you reapproved with Regions again, or since your pre-approval is no longer good, let's connect you with my gal or my guy, and let's get you started there. Does that make sense? We almost always need to dig in and ask another 1 or 2 or 3 questions when we're doing our job. The same goes for us as lenders, right? You're talking to a client and sometimes they give you an answer and you're like, man, that just doesn't sound right, or it's not really what I wanted to hear. Let me dive in a little bit. So you said you are inheriting a property. So you are inheriting it, or you've already inherited it? Like, I need to get a little bit more information there. And sometimes things come to the surface where you're like, okay, wow, there's a lot more going on here. It's good for me to find this out on day 1 versus 2 days before closing when we may not close now. The same thing on the real estate side, asking a couple of, it's not even tough questions, clarifying questions early on can help you lead that buyer the way you want to lead them. But we have to dig in a little deeper early on. Does that make sense? Hope that helps.
And the best way, guys, is have them get a second opinion, right? Hey, you went to a doctor, he's going to cut off your big toe. Maybe you want a second opinion. It's a big decision, right? Go to somebody I know and I trust and I like, and get a second opinion from a lender that I trust. So
Big thank you, by the way, to MTAR for letting us use this space. We appreciate them.
you're welcome.